So you've written a very, very interesting book just out recently, The Plot to Change America, How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. A topic we've covered quite a bit on American thought leaders, broadly speaking. Before we go in there, I want to talk to you about this recent article that you've written, finding a connection between the Black Lives Matter founder and pro-Chinese Communist Party groups in America. And this is pretty fascinating because there's been people alleging these kinds of connections. There's some ideological overlap, but this is the first time a kind of financial connection was discovered.
Well, yes, the overlap is ideological, definitely. One has to realize that this founder, Alicia Garza, sits atop a worldwide revolutionary network. It's really a holding company for revolutionary cells. So one of the main ones, which she founded, is the Black Lives Matter global network. Now, I have to make clear that nobody is against the sentiment that Black Lives Matter. In fact, I think all Americans adhere, at any rate, should adhere to the fact that Black lives, of course, do indeed matter. We're talking about the organizations. So Alicia Garza is one of the founders of these organizations. And in 2018, she founded yet another one called the Black Futures Lab. And the Black Futures Lab, if you go to the donate button, says that the money you give will go to the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco. The Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco is an organization that has done has pushed the Chinese the Beijing line in San Francisco, that has taken some actions that would benefit the People's Republic of China, but the main thing is that its leaders. Many of its leaders are members of Left Root. Left Root is an organization of the hard left, in which a lot of people, the Chinese Progressive Association of Boston, its leaders are also members of Left Root, and I think that's where the ideological overlap is with Alicia Garza and the Black Lives Matter organization, because Alicia Garza is a Marxist, has said that she needs to smash capitalism, has said this several times. I just viewed a video this morning of the two other founders, Opal Tometi and Patrisse Cullors, chanting, we have nothing to lose but our chains, which is obviously straight out of the Communist Manifesto. So I think the overlap, the Venn diagram overlap between the Black Lives Matter organizations, Alicia Garza, and groups like CPA San Francisco is this.
No, it's very interesting, and but you actually found that there's a financial connection between the CPA and this new organization that Alicia Garza founded.
Yes, the Black Futures Lab is a fiscally sponsored project of the San Francisco CPA. I think that a lot of the Black Lives Matter organizations are fiscally sponsored projects of one thing or another, because that gives them a degree of flexibility in how opaque they can be and how they spend their money. That's what the critics have said. For example, the Black Lives Matter Global Network used to be a fiscally sponsored project of Thousand Currents. Thousand Currents is another funder of the hard left. And then it emerged in July because of research that was done by people here in Washington, that the vice chairman of the board of Thousand Currents is Susan Rosenberg, who used to be a member of the Weather Underground, which the FBI identified as a domestic terrorist organization. She spent time in prison. Susan Rosenberg, her sentence was commuted by Bill Clinton in his last day in office, and here she is sitting on the board of Thousand Currents. So after this emerges, Black Lives Matter Global Network, which is very media savvy, became a fiscally sponsored project of the Tides Center, which is also a funder of the hard left, but at least it doesn't have Susan Rosenberg on its board.
So Michael, you mentioned a couple of different organizations. You mentioned a San Francisco CPA and a Boston CPA, obviously different organizations. What actually ties these groups to the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, they were both created by Ai Weiwei. Ai Weiwei was a hard Marxist militant organization in the 60s, which created the San Francisco CPA in 1972. Then some of the IWK people, when they created the CPA in Boston in 1977, they're separately registered and separately run. Its members are connected through organizations such as Left Roots, which is a Marxist organization. Right. Both of them, the CPA in Boston has done events with the Chinese consulate in Boston, with the Chinese consulate in New York, but the events have taken place in Boston. And the CPA in San Francisco has taken steps to defend the People's Republic of China. For example, they were part of an organization in 1977 that urged the Department of Justice not to investigate Chinese spying in America. That's spying by China. And they used the specious pretext that this was racial profiling. I must say that in this particular instance, they combined with a group that was for affirmative action, which shows that they're not really working in the interests of Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans are one of the groups that is worst affected by racial profiling in university admissions. In fact, the Chinese American parents are very activated all across the country trying to fight racial preferences.